Chair of the Advisory Committee on Capitol Security, Lieutenant Governor Yvonne Prettner Solon joins me now to talk a little bit about the committee work. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate your time here.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Julie.
Well, let's begin, Lieutenant Governor, with the fact this committee's been meeting for well over a year now, and in January of 2013 issued a report highlighting key areas of concern for safety. Can you encapsulate the general assessment of that report?
Well, basically, actually, we were established by law in 2011, and so we started meeting the beginning of 2012, and we're charged for 10 years with doing an assessment of security in the capital area complex. And that encompasses a number of issues, whether it's just the physical security or it's cybersecurity or it's the continuity of government if something should occur of a catastrophic nature where the Capitol would not be a safe place to be or it was destroyed. So it actually covers a large area. And our charge is to meet annually and to make an assessment of security and then make recommendations to the governor and to the legislature on an annual basis by January 15th.
And you have gone on record stating that you believe the Capitol has vulnerabilities. How vulnerable do you think it is? And does the report reflect that level of vulnerability, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think everybody has vulnerabilities, and I don't know that we have done a thorough enough assessment, actually, of how vulnerable or how safe we are. Everything is anecdotal at this time. And so last year we recognized that we had a very slim staff compared to other capital areas around the country and made a recommendation to increase the number of troopers that were on duty on a regular basis, as well as the number of security staff that are contracted with at the Capitol complex. We also felt that it should be centralized because traditionally here at the Minnesota Capitol, each agency has taken care of their own security for their agency, and we felt that we could be more efficient and more cost-effective if it were a centralized organization right here with Capitol Security.
And you mentioned earlier cybersecurity. Has this always been on the radar of this committee, or is it something that just recently appeared given some of the issues happening on a federal level and also the security breach, although it was a human error? The security breach with Minshore certainly brought it back into the headlines again as well.
No, it's always been on the, at least for the last 2 years, but I know that it was even while I was in the legislature, was something that we knew we needed to be aware of. There's a lot of data, private data of our citizens that is kept in a number of our agencies, whether it's in health or revenue or Department of Transportation, and we believe we have a responsibility to protect that data. And so we need to be aware of where the vulnerabilities are. Today, actually, our meeting will be on cybersecurity.
Let's talk about another issue that continues to pop up, and that is, of course, whether or not guns should be banned here at the Capitol. There are varied opinions on the matter, even in the committee. The current system essentially trusts individuals who will be carrying here at the Capitol to alert Capitol Security that they will have a weapon. Do you think that the system is good enough?
I think that there are holes in the system, and I think there are ways that we could tighten up our security, keeping in mind that this is the people's house and that we do want people to have access and free flow into the Capitol. We also want to assure that the people that are in the Capitol are safe while they're there. We need to protect our visitors. We have a number of children that come through here. We want to make sure that they're safe. And we have a number of staff that work in the Capitol, but not just the Capitol. It's the whole Capitol complex, which is a large area and encompasses most, if not all, of our agencies.
So, Lieutenant Governor, the report that was issued in January does acknowledge that politics and varied interests can get in the way of implementing some of the recommendations. If there were, say, a handful that you feel are must-haves, things that you want to make the entire complex more secure, what would those be?
I don't actually have that. I know areas that I think we need to discuss, and I think the first business is educating people, and then based on that education, doing an assessment to determine whether or not there are vulnerabilities that exist. What I'm aware of is that all people have to do is to call up and say, I have a license to carry and I will be carrying in the Capitol. Well, we don't always check to see if they actually have a license to carry, and we never ask people on what days they will be carrying in the Capitol, so we don't have a count at any time about how many guns might be in the Capitol. The question also is whether chairs or caucus, the majority leader, the Speaker of the House, has any authority to say, you know, we're taking up some pretty volatile issues today. We'd like to keep guns out of the chamber or out of the committee room on this day. I don't know if that's something that should be allowed or not, but it certainly deserves discussion because people have expressed that they don't always feel safe. And even though some people have a permit to carry, there may be people carrying in the Capitol that have no permit to carry. One other thing is that once they say that they have a permit to carry, according to the policy that we enforce at this point, they're able to carry those guns, into perpetuity, and it isn't tied at all to when they have to become relicensed, which is every 5 years.
Lieutenant Governor, as the chair of this committee, you're essentially charged with figuring out how to formulate these recommendations as well. Is it your preference that perhaps a big sweeping piece of legislation is introduced next session, or would you rather handle these issues individually, navigate issue by issue instead of one big, broad piece of legislation?
I haven't given that a tremendous amount of thought, although generally I think about providing a report, and in that report, the bill that we would recommend to be introduced. And I think it's probably easier for people to understand if they see something globally and how all the pieces fit together rather than having separate pieces of legislation going through the system.
Okay, with those words, thank you so much for joining us here on the Capitol Report Set. We really appreciate having you.
Okay, thank you, Julie.